Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another incredible barn find adventure. Today, we're stepping into a forgotten world hidden beneath decades of dust, rust, and silence. Sitting in front of us is not just another abandoned car. This is a 1968 Pontiac GTO, one of the most legendary American muscle cars ever built. This GTO was discovered deep inside an old abandoned farm, where dozens of forgotten vehicles had been left to decay. The restoration team had purchased the entire property, meaning every rusted relic on the land now belonged to them. In the days leading up to this discovery, they had already hauled away several other vehicles along with piles of valuable spare parts. But among all the forgotten machines buried in this automotive graveyard, one car stood above the rest, the Pontiac GTO. Today, when people talk about American muscle cars, names like the Ford Mustang, Dodge Challenger Hellcat, and Chevrolet Camaro immediately come to mind. But long before those modern icons dominated the streets, there was another generation of machines that defined raw American horsepower, and few names carried more weight than the Pontiac GTO. There was once a saying in motorsports, getting to the top is difficult, but staying there is even harder. The Pontiac GTO understood that challenge better than most. During its prime, it established itself as a symbol of power and performance, earning admiration from enthusiasts across the country. It represented freedom, rebellion, and the spirit of a generation that craved excitement behind the wheel. The GTO was originally produced from 1963 through 1974, spanning 4 generations in the United States. Although Pontiac briefly revived the nameplate in the early 2000s through General Motors' Australian subsidiary, Holden, many enthusiasts believe the true soul of the GTO lives within the classic models from the golden era of American muscle. The car before us today is a 1968 model, part of the second generation of GTO production. By this point, Pontiac had refined the formula. The styling became more aggressive, the lines sharper, and the attitude unmistakably muscular. It looked fast even when standing still. However, decades of abandonment had not been kind. As soon as the restoration team opened the doors, they were hit by an overwhelming odor. According to the crew, this may have been the worst-smelling vehicle they had ever attempted to rescue. Years of neglect had transformed the interior into a home for rodents and other unwanted tenants. Yet beneath the filth and decay, signs of hope began to emerge. Once the layers of debris were cleared away, the team discovered that much of the car remained surprisingly intact. Aside from missing taillights and several areas showing signs of previous repairs, the body panels had survived remarkably well. Considering that this Pontiac had been sitting untouched for decades, its condition was nothing short of extraordinary. Opening the trunk revealed even more surprises. Inside were several valuable original components, including the missing taillight assemblies, a wheel cover, a carburetor, and an old clutch assembly. Mixed among these treasures was a cardboard box that had long ago been converted into a rodent nest. Getting the GTO home was only the beginning. The tires had completely deflated over the years. Their sidewalls collapsed under the weight of time. Simply unloading the vehicle from the trailer became a challenge of its own. After installing replacement wheels and tires, attention shifted toward assessing the mechanical systems. One interesting detail quickly stood out. This 1968 GTO was equipped with drum brakes. While that might seem typical for a vehicle from this era, many people don't realize that earlier GTO models had offered disc brakes. As Pontiac evolved the platform, certain design decisions changed, reflecting both manufacturing considerations and consumer expectations of the time. The story behind the GTO itself is equally fascinating. During the early 1960s, General Motors had officially prohibited its divisions from participating directly in racing activities. Pontiac responded by taking a different approach. Rather than marketing the GTO as a race car, they emphasized its street performance. At the time, GM limited intermediate cars to engines no larger than 330 cubic inches. But Pontiac engineers discovered a loophole. They offered the larger engine as an optional upgrade instead of standard equipment. As a result, buyers could order their GTO with a massive 400 cubic inch V8, approximately 6.6 liters of pure American muscle. And that's exactly what lies beneath the hood of this forgotten machine. With cautious optimism, The restoration team began their inspection. Wiring connections were checked. A battery was installed. Before attempting to start the engine, they manually rotated internal components to verify that the engine wasn't seized. Then they noticed something remarkable. At some point before the car had been parked away, its previous owner had carefully covered the carburetor opening with a piece of cloth. That simple act of protection may have saved the engine from years of contamination. A little lubricant was applied to the carburetor components. The starter motor was engaged. The engine turned over. For anyone involved in automotive restoration, that moment means everything. If the engine turns, hope remains alive. Unlike some rescue projects where the carburetor must be completely removed, the team decided to keep this one intact. Their confidence grew stronger with every step. Fuel delivery appeared to be the primary obstacle. They introduced starting fluid. The engine coughed, then coughed. Again, a few scattered explosions echoed. Through the shop, everyone stopped what they were. Another attempt, more sputtering. Then suddenly, after decades of silence, the mighty 400 cubic inch V8 roared back to life. Cheers erupted throughout the garage, but the work had only just begun. Old fuel lines were disconnected and flushed. What poured out hardly resembled gasoline anymore. Years of sitting had transformed the contents into a thick, contaminated mess capable of destroying internal engine components if left untreated. Fresh fuel filters were installed, ignition components were inspected. New spark plugs replaced the originals that had faithfully served another era. Gradually, the engine settled into a steadier rhythm. The deep rumble of American horsepower once again filled the workshop. Finally, came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The Pontiac moved under its own power. As the driver pressed the accelerator, gravel scattered across the floor, and the unmistakable sound of a classic V8 echoed throughout the building. The sleeping giant had awakened. Of course, this was far from the end of the journey. Removing the interior revealed extensive rust hidden beneath decades of neglect. Sections of the floor would require cutting and replacement. Structural repairs still lay ahead. Yet the philosophy guiding this restoration remained unchanged. Preserve as much originality as possible. The team had no interest in swapping in a modern engine or transforming the car into something it was never meant to be. Anyone can build a fast car with enough money and aftermarket parts, but preserving history is something entirely different. The true value of a classic automobile isn't measured by horsepower figures or quarter-mile times. It's measured by the stories it carries, the memories it creates, and the generations it connects. This 1968 Pontiac GTO had once represented the dreams of an era defined by freedom and performance. It had survived changing times, decades of neglect, and near certain destruction. Now, against all odds, it had been given a second chance. And while the road to complete restoration would undoubtedly be long and challenging, one thing had already become clear. The legend of this Pontiac GTO was not ending inside an abandoned barn. In many ways, it was only just beginning.